It is Bria Katrin here. I am always excited to get to make another video. This one is going to be interesting because, Lord, I have a lot to say and to share, and it just is like, how do we bring this together and tie it up in a nice little package for everyone? Because I really, really want to talk about the connection with your brain, your heart, and ultimately, I, in a sense, want to help give a new perspective on obedience, and actually sin, which, stay with me, I know that many people who are Christians have walked in circles that have focused on sin and trying to get the sin out of your life and to walk in some standard of holiness, and you don't want to do that. I pray, and that is not what I'm teaching, but I pray that I can share through my own experience, through coming to Christ and what God has shown me and the healing focus, transformation focus, how I have been able to stay out of some ditches when it comes to understanding why I'm doing what I'm doing, not condemning myself, and actually learning to walk in greater freedom. Okay, so I walk in a lot of freedom and a lot of obedience. That is not pride saying that at all. That is all yielding and the Holy Spirit doing his work. I am not perfect by any means, any means. There is certainly in every one of us ungodly self-reliance that we are turning over to him. We should be turning over to him, not fighting, not trying to fix it, not trying to overcome it, because that's, again, more self-reliance, trying to fight self-reliance, which is pride, which is obviously a sin. So yes, I'm admitting I am a sinner still. All of us are. None of us, until we are walking in full communion with the Lord, which will never be this side of eternity, with nothing broken between us, always abiding in every moment in God's love, that is fulfilling the law. That is holiness. The Bible says that in John. Don't have the verse on me right now, but basically we could say holiness is synonymous with love and abiding in his love. Man, it's so good. So the more we focus on him, his love for us, receive it, in turn, we can pour it out. We can walk in love, and we can be more holy, in a sense of more whole, more fully human, and able to reject lies of the enemy, reject temptations, reject sin. But we got to get healed. So what the Lord showed me, okay, Lord, where do I start with all this? And I'm so blessed by my sister, who I brought on recently, my very, very dear best friend, Rachel, because she did grow up in Christian backgrounds, and there was a lot of legalism, and it's a real thing. And I did not. In fact, at a young age, I reject this idea that I somehow had to be approved, or I wasn't good enough, and that like sort of bearing this burden of having to please somebody, this God that it didn't make sense to me. And so obviously I rejected all that. And then through the lies that I believed, obviously I became an atheist. So when I came to Jesus Christ, who is so amazing and so awesome and so much better than we could ever ask, imagine, or think, I was coming through a lens of understanding and reading the Bible and about the heart through a lens of healing. And through learning what I had was learning, and am still always learning about the nervous system, the brain, the nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, the parasympathetic, the limbic system, which is in the temporal lobe of your brain. It's got 4 parts. We can talk more about that. Really, really important to know about the limbic system. I understood that my behaviors, thoughts, and emotions that were not lining up with health and wholeness and freedom through Jesus Christ were symptoms. And so, in a sense, what I learned in my journey was, instead of seeing myself as a bad person who's not, that God's upset with, I saw myself as a broken person who needs healing. And that the reason that I'm acting in the way that I'm acting through some form of quote unquote sin, I'm saying that because I know that word is so just heavy and just filled with so much condemnation. But when I'm not operating in rest and digest and freedom and my true identity in Christ, my true identity of who I am as a beloved daughter, and I'm not acting out of that in love, that it is because it is a symptom of my own woundedness, of my own trauma loop, and that there's a nervous system state that my body was in that was, in a sense, creating sensations or impulses, their temptations coming up. Now, I'm not taking the devil out of this at all. Please don't hear that. And I am not in any way condoning sin. That is not what I'm saying. But what I learned was, and I continue to read the word and just like marinate on all these things. And I was understanding that like Jesus came to heal the brokenhearted. He came to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to open the prison to those who are bound, obviously to preach the gospel to the poor. So we are poor. And to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. And healing the brokenhearted, it's all over the Bible. He's all about healing. And that's what Jesus came. He came to heal the sick. He came to destroy the works of the devil. The wounds that were inflicted because of sin from the very beginning, that wounds passed on. So anything that we're dealing with when it comes to trauma, which the Greek word for that is wounding, whether you experience physiological trauma, which was for me, I really felt like it was all physiological until later God showed me, no, honey, my dear, like there were rejection wounds, abandonment wounds, there was hurt that happened in your life. It's the way your heart interpreted it, set the stage for these things that happen physiologically to not be healed. And there to be resistance and self-reliance and all these different things because of walls that I had put up. That is a whole deeper conversation that I don't think I can have today. But I really was on this trajectory with God of understanding healing. Lord, help me and give me words. That his love heals ultimately at the end of the day, that I am broken. We have all been broken. Sin entered the world. Sin caused all diseases in the world. And that the only thing that brings true health and freedom is love. And I'm not the only one out there who believes this. It's actually not as ludicrous as it might sound. There's a lot of ancient tradition within our church, in the Catholic Church. I'm not going to be able to reference these things right now, but I should bring references next time I do a video like this, because I've got so many that we want to look at the whole person perspective. And when it comes to healing, and we also want to look at the whole person perspective in terms of what woundedness is and sin is. So, okay, let's give a definition. Lord, help me with this because I don't already have it planned. I'm just going to use one very specific example right now, too, that help you to see why potentially you are, quote unquote, not able to walk in obedience with what you know the Lord is telling you to do. So, for example, maybe you have a really hard time perpetually with anger with your spouse and rage with your spouse. And you're like, man, that's not pleasing to God. You feel condemned about it. You want to change. No matter how much you try to change, you cannot change. So let's look at it on a different lens rather than I'm sinning. God doesn't want me to sin and I need to change. Yes, we need to repent. I am not condoning sin in any way, but we can get free from this sense that somehow, that we're stuck and that ultimately we kind of bear all the burden of this, or how do I give you another word for it? Okay, let's just look at the example. So let's just look at somebody, and I hope everyone has experienced this. I know I did, especially when you're a sick person. So when you're hungry, people talk commonly about that hangry. I mean, there's stickers commercials even out there about being hangry, right? So you're more easily irritable when your body is hungry. What's happening? There's signaling of hormones. There's signaling in the brain and hormones and things happening in the body that are like, I'm hungry. You're not in that complete rest and digest. There's this uptick, if you will, in your body of like, and maybe discomfort even that can come with being really, really hungry. But one thing that can happen with some people is they tend to get more irritable in those moments where they're just low on energy, and then they can lash out more easily or just feel that anger or feel judgment for someone or something. Would you call that sin? Would you call that sin? Just ask yourself that. Would you call that sin? I mean, are you getting angry at someone? Are you judging them? Are you maybe projecting something in your heart and mind that and you want to withhold something from them in that moment because they've hurt you, and you don't feel like you want to walk away, or you want to lash out and say something that's hurtful to them because you want to get revenge on them. But what's happening? Is it sin or is it not sin? Like, let's not take out what's happening in your body. The reality is it is sin. But the point is that, is the body not a part of this? Were you not hungry? Were you not already in an irritable state? Maybe there's lots of noise going on at some point. Is it harder to hold on to, hold your tongue in that moment? Probably. Somebody who's in a lot of pain, anybody that knows that they're in the, like, they can be quick, shorter, they can have a harder time with dealing with someone who's kind of grating on their nerves, so to speak. So is that or is that not sin? Another example, somebody who is struggling with sickness, for all intents and purposes, they are living the most purest life that they can, but as they're getting sick, a sympathetic response, again, as they're sick and they're walking through this, again, we talk about a lot in brain retraining and understanding us, spirit, soul, and body, about the nervous system with the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic, and the sympathetic is that fight or flight. And the parasympathetic is the rest and digest. And for healing to turn on, we want to get into that rest and digest. Rest, healing, digest takes place. So we want that. So what happens is one of the ways that the sympathetic nervous system expresses itself is in sexual arousal. So we've got a lot of people out there right now who are suffering and struggling with maybe pornography, masturbation, lustful thoughts, all that kind of stuff. Are they in sin or are they not in sin when they're struggling and they're hurting, and their body, in the middle of not even thinking about those things, is bringing something up and there's sexual arousal there? Is it sin or is it not sin? This is probably more common than people think. And people will tend to cope with it some way or another to get it to go away. Is it sin or is it not sin? I mean, I think in any case, we can still consider it sin, but redefining sin through a lens of somebody who's been wounded, and sin wounds people. So it can be someone else's sin, a sin, maybe a pain or a hurt that somebody's trying to medicate with masturbation, with lustful thoughts, with pornography, something like that, that there is that medication of a hurt and a pain, wound of something that's happened in their life along the way. Maybe it's even, they don't even know what it is, but there's physical pain, and that alcohol or drugs or, sex or something like that medicates them. They're in pain, they're suffering, they're broken, they've been abused. Are they in sin? So I'm trying to help people see, ultimately, your nervous system state that you can get into can cause these sensations, these habits to perpetuate. It's a loop that we get into. Why am I saying all this, Lord? I'm trying to help people to see that when you are sick and weak and broken, is it not easier, or let's say it the other way, is it not harder to resist temptation of the flesh in ways where, indulging the flesh in some way? Social media, I'm not saying that's sin, just saying social media, there certainly can be a lusting that takes place in there. There's self-medicating that takes place, a coping mechanism. So in many ways, our sins become coping mechanisms for a hurt or a pain or a wound of something that we have experienced in our hearts. And oftentimes we don't even know what they are. So when I came to God and I realized trauma loop, again, I didn't realize I had, quote unquote, I guess, mental, emotional trauma. I thought I had a decent upbringing. I mean, but now the Lord is showing me how not now, but He did show me how my heart interpreted along the way, how my heart had interpreted a lot of painful experiences in my life, and in many ways just shut them down and tried to do the best I could and just figured I'd manage on my own, and those wounds were never healed. And they absolutely festered beneath the surface until, because your brain keeps record of all the experiences that you have had, all the sensations and the perceptions and the ways that you've perceived things, that gets remembered in your brain. Your brain is a pattern recognition organ. No matter what, you wish you could forget something, but it's there until we receive healing. And you might have received healing for certain things along the way. So I'm not telling you need to go back and rehash everything that you have gone through, but the Lord will bring things up as you come to him and you start to receive his love, unconditional love, and let that flow and wire in your identity in him. And he will continue to bring more and more light, and you'll be able to bring some things to light as you feel safer bringing it. Especially exposing pain, where he can come in and his love can heal that. Okay, I got off on a tangent. What was I saying? We were talking about sin and obedience. So because I need to talk through my own lens, because I did not grow up in church, and I did not learn about, again, that like the word sin just stayed out of my vocabulary. I think it stung very quickly as a child when I heard about it. And if I ever heard about it again, I was just like, it just did not land with me. All it brought was shame and condemnation. And I had spent a life, by the age of 5, when I first experienced some form of shame and embarrassment, basically, I'm like, I don't want to feel that again. And I basically led this life of like, nope. So I rejected this idea that there's even, that sin is a real thing, and that this God that they talk about, this Jesus that they talk about, he didn't make sense to me. I'm not saying that there's no such thing as sin. Just realizing my camera is, we're going to pause this for 1 second. I'm going to probably come back. It's just my camera seems to be fuzzy, and I want to make sure, well, that's better, that I'm not fuzzy. So when I came to the Lord and I came to read the Bible, and I came to learn that, symptoms of somebody who's dealing with what was at the time I understood as a limbic system impairment, that there's certain behaviors that are addictive, self-destructive. It's a symptom of the loop itself, a symptom of a wound, a symptom of brokenness, a symptom of broken love. As I was soon finding out that dose chemistry, which brings us and helps when that's present flowing as neurotransmitters and through our bodies, that we're in this rest and digest state and we can heal. And that the absence of that, there's TAN chemistry, the cortisol, adrenaline, and norepinephrine, which is stress response, which is fear, which we know perfect love, Casso, fear, that there's not perfect love there. So it's broken love where we have a stress response. As I was learning all of this and putting it all together, I started to see that I am going to be able to quiet the stress response through God's love, because he quiets us with his love in Zephaniah 3:17, among many, many other verses. So quieting the fear, obviously, through his love. And I will be able to not go to a coping mechanism of a wound, of broken love, the more that I'm just abiding in his love. And that meant that I need to be in this Jesus bubble all the time, essentially, knowing who he is. He's focused on me. He loves me, not just me, but that I'm special and beautiful to him, and he's here with me, and he's taking care of me. I'm sorry, my camera keeps fuzzing out. I'm like, dang it. That as I saw it through that lens, I started to see the overlap with the symptoms of broken love that I'm talking about, and our limbic system impairment and sin. And I was like, so when am I sinning and when am I not sinning? Like, when is it just a symptom, and when am I actually sinning in something that I'm responsible for? I don't have an answer for you for that, because I'm not God. I think it all does come down to the matter of the heart. But all I have found with God, and I am not condoning sin, if anything, through the revelations and walking with the Lord, the way that he's taught me just to receive from him, I am learning to grow in quote unquote obedience or holiness, and holiness meaning just being a whole person and related to him rightly. And again, I'm not perfect, but I'm able to see the areas that I'm potentially off or not abiding in his love. And I'm able to, through the deep rooted security in him, my relationship with him, my identity with him, I'm able to bring that to him and let him lead me in the way that he wants to go, which oftentimes isn't the greatest, because I don't want to go into self-reliance. That's where I end up getting into quote unquote sin, or into some form of a coping mechanism of broken love where there's a wall up and I'm not coming to him and abiding in him. So I don't want to go to those coping mechanisms. Again, let's just use that even synonymously in some ways with sin. And you might not like that word because, again, you grew up in a church. You grew up in church. I shouldn't say that. I don't think all churches are like this. But it's the more that you can see it as a symptom of brokenness, it's easier to recognize, okay, I come to God, I bring it to him, I yield over, he loves on me. I come and I want him to transform me and heal me of whatever the wound is behind why I'm acting this way, or doing this thing, or thinking this way, or not thinking this way, or whatever it is. And when you do that, it's far easier. You're not condemning yourself over it. You are, you're not accepting, because what I did is I was like, I'm not accepting that this is my life, or I'm not accepting that this is okay, this behavior, this quote unquote coping mechanism that I'm operating in. So let's just talk about one for me would have been binge eating. I'm not accepting that this is okay. It's gluttony. It's not right. But and I did struggle with condemnation over it, because I felt like I tried over and over and over again to get out of that before I even knew it as a sin. So in that way, I do understand the loop of condemnation that comes, and I had to learn to get free and see it's myself as safe in that behavior first, which sounds the opposite of what you would think to get free, where you're almost like you're tolerating it, you're accepting it. But I saw there's brokenness and there's pain and there's wounding behind this behavior. And this isn't me, it's a sin dwelling in me, but I'm gonna continue to trust God and come in prayer to him and go and do all I know to do in my, especially in brain retraining, and receive the love of God for me and how beautiful I am, and ask him to guide me if there's any areas where I'm feeling, inadequate. And certainly had a lot of body image issues, a lot of rejection of self in that, that God was able to work through and heal in me. So, okay, so back to sin. I'm trying to understand through the lens of brokenness and woundedness. Right. So where is it sin then? Where am I accountable? I mean, I think at some point the Lord shows us things, and he's showing us like, hey, like, come with me, yield this over to me, come closer to me, especially now. Like, I feel like if I were to go, Lord help me, I don't want to say the wrong thing, because I'm like, I don't know, I don't test these things. But I'm like, I'm trying to think if there were a specific area where I decided, you know what, I'm going to willingly go and do that thing, knowing that God's already showed me what he showed me, and it's rejecting him and his love, and it's putting something between him and I still think he'd be quite compassionate with me, with like, no, you still didn't know, like, you were an idiot, but like, you still had a wound and you weren't fully trusting me. Now, I don't want to be separate from God. I don't not sin because I think I'm bad when I sin. I choose him because I'm like, you're the life. Like, you give me everything that I need. You've got the best thing. And this is a super long video. Hopefully it gets posted. I hope it's not too fuzzy. What I learned through all of this, especially, is the overlap in my behavior. I'm going to use the word sin again. I know it's hard for those of you who are believers, who've been believers for a long time. You get to condemn by that word. But let's look at it this way. Stress response is the way that I've always seen it. If I'm acting out in a certain way and coping with fear, let's just say, medicating a pain by eating and numbing myself out, or social media. I'm not saying that's a sin, but it can be, certainly, in a way that it's just a coping mechanism that's just numbing you. That's the way that I mean it. So if I'm doing that, I'm letting a stress response run, yeah? Which is driving, for those of you who know enough about brain retraining, it's driving can chemistry, right? And I'm not in dose chemistry. I'm not building pathways of health and wholeness and freedom at that point. I'm building pathways. You're always building pathways. There's always neuroplasticity happening, whether you believe it or realize it or not. So I'm building pathways that are actually curating not only separation from God, but in a sense, more sickness in my body because I'm letting the can chemistry run. I'm going in a pathway that the wages of sin are death. Like it's just a death pathway. So if I'm doing that, it's a stress response. I'm not responding the way of safety, psycho safety. I'm in fear. I'm reacting and I'm feeling unsafe in that moment, whether I realize it or not, because of some pain. And my way of dealing with that is eating. Now, let's talk about my kids and my parenting. As I'm letting that run, I'm continuing to perpetuate a loop of I'm not safe. I'm using a coping mechanism. It's keeping me propped up. But then on top of it, I'm also condemning myself, which just drives more stress. So stress response, fear, not feeling safe, some wound that's happened, I eat. I feel condemned. I feel condemned myself. Maybe I work out harder. Maybe I starve myself the next day. I'm just saying there's lots of different ways that this can continue to perpetuate with more bad decisions that create more stress response. So what does that do? When I am in more of a quote unquote stressed out state, which is what I'm saying, right? Was I'm enabling or empowering or allowing myself to go down those pathways. Now, please do not hear condemnation because there is time and a journey in this that you can learn to break down through your relationship with God and Him loving on you and you receiving it, that it can start to heal, and bring healing from the inside out. But it's going to affect my parenting. Why? Because I'm now running on and operating more out of a state of fear. Ultimately, there's insecurity. I'm letting it run. I'm not yielding it over to God. I'm not letting Him in. I'm not letting God in. That's ultimately what I'm not doing. I'm coping with it and managing with it in the way that I could. So if I'm already in a more stressed out state, I'm more disconnected from God because I've decided to kind of do things my own way and manage and cope. When it comes to my parenting and there's a tough thing that comes up, a tough situation that comes up, am I not more easily going to stress out? Am I not more easily maybe going to judge my kids, criticize them, get scared of what they're going through? Am I going to be in peace? Probably not as easily. I'm probably going to more easily make the wrong decision as a parent because of other behaviors and other choices that I have made. None of this is to condemn you or put pressure on you. It's to help you see the overlap of how your behavior and our choices, even when we think they don't impact us or somebody else. And that's what the Lord was showing me. He's like, you do realize your obedience in this one area that you're working on right now will impact you as a parent, will impact you in your relationships, will impact the people around you. And I was like, huh. I was like, so it can help someone else heal. He's like, yeah, it can. And I was like, okay. Oh, it's gonna make me cry because I'm like, there are people I want to see healed who I love dearly. And I can tell you that the Lord has definitely spoken to me that they're gonna be healed. And He's telling your obedience to me in every way will bring healing in other people. And I was like, then I'm in. I am in and I am motivated. It's no longer just about me. It's about affecting other people. And I can be a source of healing in the body of Christ for other people, literally by my own obedience. And it took recognizing quote unquote sin as symptoms of a stress response and how I need to learn to be like that tree that I've talked about in Jeremiah 17, 7-8. Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, whose hope is in the Lord, for he shall be like a tree who is planted by the rivers, which spreads its roots out, planted by the water, spreads its roots out in the river. I forget the wording. He does not fear. I don't know the exact, I never remember this, but he does not fear when the heat comes. He is not anxious in the year of drought. His leaf is still green and he does not cease yielding fruit. And I was like, that is the kind of tree, the oak of righteousness that I think Isaiah talks about. I was like, I need to be that strong oak of righteousness. I need to be that tree who in the middle of tough circumstances is like, we're good. We're good. We're good. We're good. Why? Because then I can respond and not react in situations where maybe my children are suffering and they need love. And instead of judging them or getting down on them or getting irritable when they're acting out and be like, oh, I can't handle this right now, I can turn around and be a source of life and love for them to feel safe, because they're often acting out because they don't feel safe. They've got their own journeys in this world where they've had broken love, essentially. So full circle, what I'm trying to say is that we have these nervous system states that we are in. We ask, are we weaker when we're sick? Yes, 100% weaker when we're sick. Is it our fault? Not necessarily, and probably not, to be honest. Even if you think it's your fault, it's probably not your fault, because there's so many things that have happened and your heart's interpreted in a certain way. And now you're stuck in this pattern. And this certainly is because we are spirit, soul, and body, but man, how much our body matters in our experiences, right? I mean, emotions are chemicals that are secreted through your limbic system. I said we needed to talk about your limbic system. Your limbic system is the spot in your brain there where all emotions are a chemical secreted through your limbic system. Your memory and your emotion connection are in that limbic system. It is very responsible for whether or not you are going to freak out, send an alarm, whether you're going to just let it go. And that limbic system is very, very powerful. It's not separated though from your heart, from the rest of you, but it's important to recognize that there are conditionings, habitual programmings through woundedness, through things that have happened in our life that end up with us firing out a lot of wrong chemistry, a lot of chemistry that we do not want. And in that state, are you more easily susceptible to temptations that do not line up with abiding in God's love? Yes, 100%. But you are not a victim. You get to walk through this and trust God that he sees you as a broken person. He sees you as a wounded person who needs healing. That he is here to love on you, to bring you out of that state into rest and digest, where there's peace, there's joy, there's bliss, there's quiet in the brain, quiet in the body, and this deep rootedness and ability to resist temptation, to get angry, to lust, to overeat, to be lazy. I mean, there's lots of different ways that this can pan out. To be self-reliant, to shut down. Man, the stronger that I get in God's love for me, the easier it is for me to open the door to say, you know what, Lord? I want healing in this relationship with this person. I didn't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. But at the end of the day, I'm going to walk through this. And any stress or triggers that come up, as they come up, you're here with me. I am rooted and grounded enough in your love at this point. I feel secure in your love. That security in his love. That alone, that security in his love, man, keeps us and guards us from that sympathetic response that I'm talking about. Symptoms of brokenness, because love is there holding you. You're good in that love. You don't need to act outside of that. You don't need to think outside of that. It takes time. There's lots of ways that God can do this, but I pray what I'm sharing with you is an opportunity to see the connection between, well, woundedness and sickness in the nervous system and sin, even. The nervous system and abiding in God's love, the power of our choices and our decisions, and seeing it through a nervous system response or a stress response, that we want to withdraw from those old patterns that are just running, that perpetuate disease in our souls and our bodies. And as we do that, we can affect other areas of our lives, other people around us. And in the end, we actually are just abiding in him. And there's an obedience that comes in through his love. And you can grow in holiness, which is just a fruit, certainly not a root. Holiness is not just is not a standard of just some standard of character. It's synonymous with love, that love fulfills the law, is what Jesus told us in John. I wish I had the verse on me. And that we can walk in this place in him where we are whole in him, and in this relationship with God where we are leaning into him. And yeah, does our character change? Yes, 100%. Do our behaviors change? Yes, 100%. Because now we're operating out of love. We're not reacting in a fight or flight mechanism or state. We're acting out of love. We're responding and not reacting. There's just so much freedom and rest in that. I'm not trying to be a certain way. Let God show you how he sees you as beautiful, but as somebody who was wounded, and he took all those wounds. He was wounded for our transgressions. Like, this healing is there and is always available for us through his love. All right, I think I'm going to wrap up because I think this is pretty long. So God bless you all for listening. I pray that something has landed. I'm probably going to have to talk about this topic a heck of a lot more, because it's not well understood in most Protestants anyways, in the Western world. I pray you see how healing his love is in light of the things that I just said. All right, God bless you guys.